Why should our listeners listen to you when it comes to longevity?
Wow, Julian, that's a tough question.
Dr. Jack Kreindler is a longevity doctor, technologist, and performance expert, reimagining how we optimize health, resilience, and longevity.
Aging is a logarithmic decay, so you do very, very little of it until you're kind of about 50, then it becomes linear, and then it becomes exponential. And halving the pace of aging will buy you 10 quality years.
You coined a LinkedIn post titled, "The Longevity Doctor Who Wants to Die." What does life mean to you? What does afterlife mean to you?
We've done, I think, 17,000 clinical grade, research grade tests in our lab. Probably single best thing that you can do to measure how long you'll live for, if there's only one thing, is to measure that.
I want to look into your crystal ball. By 2030, what will a doctor, a longevity doctor, look like? The future looks amazing, but also a little scary. If you, just like me, want to have an honest outlook of what the next chapter could look like and how best to prepare for that, I ask for one simple favour: subscribe, so I can invite the brightest minds on this podcast and get those answers for both you and I. Enjoy the episode. Why should our listeners listen to you when it comes to longevity?
Julian, that's a tough question. If you want to listen to real ground truth, if you want to understand not just what it is to take, but why you should be taking it, if you want to listen to somebody who is interested not just in the molecules, but the meaning of why we're taking such things, you're probably talking to the right kind of person. The question I always get asked is, should I be on? What do you think of? You know, it's that kind of question. And the question I get them to ask is different. I usually say, that's the wrong question to be asking. What do you need to know what to take, to know what to do, if and when? And it's that kind of investigative, curious, slightly irreverent angle, which I think is where the best science is grounded. And I guess that's what I like to represent.
Because you've worn so many hats in your life so far. You've been a founder, an extreme adventurist, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, accidentally. Yeah.
A longevity physician, of course, with Well-Founded. And you wear a bunch. I've also seen that you've done a keynote at UCL's graduation day and all that. So in terms of your past, what were the most important pivotal moments that brought us to today?
A couple of things which I really loved was meeting John Lasseter when he was not famous. This has nothing to do with medicine, but I was given a scholarship by my school to go and see what were then the Oscars of the computer graphics world, called Imagini or something like that. And it was in Monaco, and I got sent off as like a 15-year-old kid to go and see what computer graphics were all about. And this is like when, you know, the little lamp had just been animated, and John Lasseter was just at the beginning of his journey. And I just remember seeing this little movie which won an award called Red's Dream, about a unicycle who was very depressed in a secondhand bicycle shop. And he dreamt about being in the circus and juggling balls and various other things, and then realizing he was just a secondhand unicycle. And it was a very sad moment for him, but it was so beautifully animated. And I remember going up to this guy saying, "Mr. Lasseter, I genuinely think that what you have done is going to change the world of animation. It's going to change the world of storytelling." And he said, "That's really kind. What's your name?" I said, "Jack." And he said, "Well, if ever you want an internship or you're interested in this stuff, you can come and work for me. We're looking for our first intern." Wow. Could have ended up being at Pixar. So that was a pivotal moment. When around that time I had to decide, was I going to go down the kind of art, graphics, UX, UI type route, or was I going to go into medicine? And my mum was pretty furious with the idea that her son was going to end up being a cartoonist. So that was a pivotal moment, actually. It was like there was a time when I was going to go, okay, am I going to go into the arts or am I going to go into the sciences? And I went down the science route. That's number one. Number two, I guess was through my work. I was moonlighting at the time when I was at medical school for Douglas Adams, when he was doing his digital stuff, The Hitchhiker's Guide Online and so forth. And I was still doing UX for him and that. And then my first Google search, sitting next to him around 97, 98. I can't remember what I wrote, but I realized that search was suddenly cool and quick and gave you real answers. And it was at that point I realized that the whole of everything that I was learning in medicine would change. I knew that the internet would suddenly become the canon of truth, not the books in the libraries, not the journals, not the papers. It would be things that everyone would contribute to. And that was pivotal because it then set me off on a journey for not only my medical career, but also my medical technology work, mainly in informing people how to look after themselves better, broadly speaking. And I'll give you one last one, I think, because there's lots of them. I mean, pivotal moments in life are big, but meeting fellow medics who were adventurers, who are in high altitude medicine, expedition medicine, extreme environments medicine, I suddenly found my tribe. And I realized that the reason why we have health is to do those things. It's not to just get a later death date. The reason why we seek health, the reason why we need to give health to people as much as we can, heal, give medicine, do surgery, whatever it is for meaning. And I find great meaning in being absolutely immersed in nature. And a great amount of everything I've done in medical practice since has been about getting people to achieve what they really want to do, not just having a later death date. So anyway, those are three that I can think of.
When I think of the longevity movement, it's been a bit of a pariah space until recently.
Yeah.
And so to be a doctor, longevity doctor, to be a longevity scientist, for a while you were somewhat of a contrarian. So you had to think slightly outside of the box, I assume. Was there some curiosity when you were going through the system, the NHS, thinking things have to be done differently?
Yeah, when I was doing emergency medicine at the Whittington Hospital up in Highgate, Archway, London, crossroads of heaven and hell. You got some of the most expensive roads in the world, and you got kind of some of the toughest, roughest.
It's my hospital, by the way.
Oh, you know the Whittington. Oh well, I hope you never had to meet me on at 4:00 in the morning when I hadn't slept properly. But we saw everything, and a lot of the stuff that was in there. I said, well, why are you there? Why is it that you are 50 years old and have got X, Y, and Z wrong with your heart, kidneys, metabolism? And it got me realizing that what we were learning in extreme environments type work in physiology, which is really the science of how does the body work and how do you get it to work better, versus what's gone wrong and how do you fix it? So that's the difference between physiology and medicine for me. And I did physiology as well as medicine in uni. Then you see the most brilliant aspects of acute medicine. You see how the blood that you have given has saved that person's life because you've replaced the liters that they've lost. You see the surgery, you just see the absolute excellence. That's cool. But why is somebody unable to use their eyes anymore because diabetes is set in from when they were already not noticing it in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and then they have no kidney function, they've lost their vision, they can't feel their fingers because of just metabolic ill health. I just think that doesn't need to happen. So all throughout the emergency medicine, I was conflicted between this is really incredible stuff, but medicine isn't doing enough to prevent. So there's no preventology, really. Primary care is about who do you need to go and see in which department at the hospital, or how do we sort of manage things without sending you there? But it's not proper preventology. And that's when I started getting really deeply interested in it, kind of between years 1999 and 2007 when I founded the Center for Health and Human Performance, which is kind of like, let's do this properly. Let's glue together physiology. Let's glue together great medicine. Let's prevent stuff, and let's improve survivorship when your longevity has been curtailed to perhaps 2 years. Because that's another very great form of longevity medicine, is applying the same principles, not to necessarily living till you're 120, but how do I extend your lifespan that you've got left from 2 years to live to 5, which is, I think, a very noble part of this so-called application of longevity science. It's survivorship.
Let's dive into that. Like, where does one start? Maybe with me, as someone who's in their 30s,
Yeah.
who is looking to, let's say, stay ahead, optimize, prevent. Where do I start?
Right. Well, first of all, do you think that going to a self-proclaimed longevity doctor is a good start?
Yes, because I believe there are innovators, early adopters, the
Yeah.
mainstream cynics, whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like, in general, I'm probably someone who's more of a first mover, and I believe this space is going to unfold and eventually become the mainstream idea. So
Interesting. Super cool etymology of words. Innovation and practice. So if you're going to a really great practitioner, it means that they're perfecting the status quo. Innovators are literally dismantling the status quo to create some new norm. So going to someone that is both innovative and good at practice is ideal. Going to someone that's too practicey, you probably end up getting maybe not the cutting edge. Okay. Go to someone that's a pure innovator, and you might end up with a stack of stuff that doesn't work or does harm.
Are there many doctor innovators right now?
Well, that's the challenge, I think, is that by very nature of being a nascent, a new emerging area, longevity, which still has no good definition. I mean, there's a challenge in and of itself. I mean, what does longevity medicine even mean? What does a longevity doctor even mean? Like, what are they actually practicing? Are they endocrinology based? Are they physiologically based? Are they nutritionally based, etc.? So there's a lot of unknowns there. But in a nascent area, you kind of want to strike a balance between the people in your team who are really great at practice and really great at innovation. Very hard to find somebody that's got both. I would say that perhaps I'm slightly unique in that I've got a foot firmly in both camps. Very, very grounded in science, but never satisfied that the current best practice is what we're going to be doing in 100 years. In fact, I think we'll be laughing at what we're doing now in 100 years, for sure. And it's probably not 100 years. But at the same time, you can't break the laws of physics. You can't break the laws of biophysics. And some of the marketing is just hilarious. So I would choose wisely between people who are giving a good spiel, but really being able to back it up. Great at communication, but also not skimping on the clinical ground truths. So choosing your longevity doctor wisely is your first instruction.
Just 2 questions on that. First of all, how do you define longevity and a longevity doctor? And this is a question I'm constantly asked. Can you recommend me in my city a longevity doctor? So maybe in the show notes, we can put a few that you would highly recommend as well.
Okay. So a longevity doctor at the moment is actually an expert in treating mice. I mean, really, that is where we have the most evidence. We've got lots of mouse models. We've got very, very few primate models, and we've got incredibly few really well proven trials in humans on this kind of new wave of longevity drugs. I personally feel that longevity as a word is cool. It's a beautiful rebrand, but longevity is not what we're aiming for. We're not aiming to delay our death date. We are absolutely aiming to increase the number of years where we're kicking ass and absolutely crushing the years where we're in bad shape. I have been known to publicly call that compression of shite span, which is where you're dependent on the folk that you once changed nappies for, and they're changing your nappies or diapers if you're in the US version of incontinence. I'm playing around, and it's a serious matter. Like, we do not want our children to be looking after us to the point for many years of their lives where they're using up their best time to care for their parents unnecessarily. So this compression of morbidity, this squaring the physiologic curve where you're doing great, and then suddenly you have a short period of illness, that is longevity. But it might not mean that you're going to live a day longer than your assigned death date. Okay, so we're using the word longevity, but let's be clear. Are you aiming to increase the number of days that you're on the planet for, or are you increasing the number of days that you're kicking ass for? That's the first question. So if you look at physicians, clinical teams, clinics that are very orientated towards performance science, physiology, those are the ones that are probably going more for health span and crushing morbidity than the folk that are saying, here's something that makes mice live longer. Really important to understand that we are already 4 or 5 standard deviations from the norm longer living than we should be for our metabolic rate. Why? Human beings have done this very cool thing called selecting great mates that look like they're going to be healthy and live longer. We've been doing that so much longer and so much better than any other species that we've ended up selecting for very generally super healthy, super long living mates. And we don't live till 50. Metabolically, we should live till 50. We're living nearly double that. So we're so far off the metabolic age expectancy curve. There's a line that kind of says blue whales live longer than fruit flies. And it goes through all of nature, all of biology. Mice live a pretty short period of time. So if you get a mouse to live twice as long, it's kind of so what? If a mouse is living 10 years, then they're kind of more like a human model. And if you can get something like that to live an extra 20%, then I'm interested. But there is not a lot yet in the longevity space where we're really getting mice to live 5 times as long as they're normally supposed to live for. So aim for the people, my view, that are combining pretty solid multidisciplinary medicine with great physiology based on performance science. And there, I reckon, you'll find the best physicians.
What if I want to live till I'm 120 and also in good health span, which let's say is not out of the possibilities for someone in their 20s.
Nothing is outside of any possibility. That is true.
I just had Aubrey de Grey on the podcast, and we were talking a lot about longevity, escape velocity, and all that. So, and he was predicting a slightly new prediction, but late 2030s for that. So if I come in and I demand both, what, apart from me starting to become curious in my data, what else could you help me with? What would you start me on?
I know what you want. You want to eat your cake and have it in that order, right? Which is the impossible order.
Okay. How many people ask for the same thing, though?
There are, I reckon, a third of people that come into my ecosystem are kind of folk that just want to be living really awesomely for their kids to grow up, and that's their real focus. Another third are super sick, and they'll be really happy to meet next Christmas. Okay, so like longevity for them is tripling their lifespan from next Christmas to 2028.
Wow.
And I think we need to be humble about that. Is you are way more likely to achieve early demise than longevity escape velocity, just statistically. Maybe, and I kind of did the calculations on this when Brian J., who I'm sure lots of your watchers and listeners will know, Mr. Johnson said that he had halved his pace of aging. Now, with linear aging, halving your pace of aging will double your life expectancy, but aging is non-linear. So aging is a logarithmic decay. So you do very, very little of it until you're kind of about 50. Then it becomes linear, and then it becomes exponential. And halving the pace of aging will buy you 10 quality years. If you do the maths, it means that 1 in 10 billion US males around our age, this is on US data, they're not very well, actually, despite the spend, they would exceed 120 years old. So by the actuarial tables, which you can download and you can chuck it in a spreadsheet, you can do the maths. If you halve the pace of aging, you'll buy yourself another 10 years, which is not too dissimilar, by the way, to the 7 years you'll get from good lifestyle and various other things like that. So halving the pace of aging doesn't make you live till 120 unless you're a very lucky lottery winner, 1 in 10 billion people, men. For women, it's a little bit more likely, by the way. But is it still worth trying? Yeah, I mean, fine. It's still worth trying, providing that you're very much going for the Healthspan piece of it. So anyone that's just saying to you, this will slow down your metabolism, this will alter your immune system, this will do things to your hormones that make you look like you're younger, probably won't result in a decent life expectancy. You'll biologically clockwise look like you are, but you'll end up in the same place. So if you need both, if you want to do both, absolutely concentrate on avoiding the asteroids that would otherwise hit you, because they're far more likely to happen than you to magically be a 1 in 10 billion person. So get checked for the things that you need to at the right time, at the right frequency, as you can afford it, without doing yourself damage, and not just buying into fancy scans without the wise counsel with it, and you'll avoid some bad things. If you want to stop skiing, horse riding, or otherwise injuring your head and ending up disabled or whatever, try that too. I wouldn't stop those things. I still ski, I still do extreme things, and I am very happy if I will meet my demise during those things. But if you want to remove all kind of ways of getting injured or having major accidents, then live a very, very sterile life. I do not recommend that, but you asked me the question. So asteroid avoidance, minimizing your exposure to accidents.
With the asteroid avoidance, can you recommend a few tests that are...
Blood work, look for things like your insulin going up, even if your sugars are the same, making sure that you are getting a grip of your lipids by way of looking at a broad range of lipids, including the famous apolipoprotein B, which has become pretty synonymous with cardiovascular risk, and getting on the right things to lower those. It's not just going to happen from diet. It may require statins or PCSK9s or whatever it is that you end up choosing, but avoiding the things that can easily get you. You know, like if you've got high blood pressure, why should that kill you? It shouldn't. Nobody should be walking around with high blood pressure unless they're really seriously anatomically or genetically unlucky. So I think cardiovascular disease is one of the biggest ones that we can kind of pretty well eliminate by sensible checking, asteroid avoidance, long-term risk management, cancer checks. I mean, why should any man die of prostate cancer? 1 in 8 of us are going to get it. Catch it early. Do something about it. You know, this is not something we should be dying from. Equally, lung cancer used to be a death sentence. Why not get that checked? I'm not talking about irradiating yourself with CT scans every year, but there are much more sensible ways of getting those things checked. Be sensible about those things. Get some advice. Look at your family history. Think about concerning symptoms. Riff with a wise old physician who's seen it 1,000 times before. Read some of the papers. Decide the cadence of when you want to get that MRI scan or not. But yeah, blood work, imaging, physical examination, etc. Those are the core things for avoiding asteroids. And we have avoided quite a few asteroids. Challenge is, for the general public, it's only affordable to do it in kind of conveyor belt way. It's very expensive to come to a team like us that very carefully look at and manage and discuss the risks and say, hey, I think this year, I know it sounds crazy, I think this year you should have a full body MRI, even though you're completely asymptomatic. And we had 2 cases last year, one which was very public with the former CEO of Google Europe, having found an otherwise completely fatal cancer. And we found it. Otherwise, guaranteed 2 years later, you are no longer here on the planet. So avoiding asteroids is a very cool way of staying around longer.
And we're going to put all links to both free and paid options as well.
Sure. Yeah. And try to get as much on your insurance, try to get as much on your health service. And those things. Be aware, though, that, of course, every investigation requires investigation afterwards if you find something. And, be ethical towards your health service. Like, if you go and do something, you find something, you need to go and have an expensive follow-up procedure, and 99% of the time that's negative. It was just a false positive. Spend it with your own money. Why get the taxpayer to do that? There are some things where you should think about, okay, what next? What if? Why? But asteroid avoidance is really important. The second main category is optimizing your physiology. Everyone talks about VO2 max. Okay, we've done, I think, 17,000 clinical grade, research grade VO2 max tests in our lab in London. That's like not just the VO2 max. Of course, it's like you get 150 other very difficult to interpret biomarkers, but they're all useful. VO2 max is the famous one that everyone talks about. And optimizing that number, your anaerobic threshold, your VO2 max, those metrics that you get from a CPEX test or a CPE test, cardiopulmonary exercise test, are probably single best thing that you can do to measure how long you'll live for. If there's only one thing, is to measure that, because that's kind of measuring your overall ability to metabolize, your overall ability to live and continue surviving is your cardiopulmonary exercise tolerance and capacity. So getting that number as high as possible, I would say, is your second key thing.
You didn't mention, by the way, the last third. Are the last third people like myself who want the cake and all of it?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's the ones, there's the ones who are super sick. There's the ones that just want to, be working, and the family, and then then the third are you.
Okay. So going back to VO2 max, let's talk maybe about the first and the third category of people. What would you recommend are the number 1 or 2 things that someone could do today to improve their VO2 max?
Move, if you're not. Move with a greater range of exercise. The compartments that you need to kind of fill are your absolute strength, which is not necessarily VO2 max, by the way, but it's metabolically active muscle mass. Not just how much muscle you've got, but muscle mass that's doing good stuff. Then you've got your kind of strength, endurance, and then you've got your aerobic. Those are the 3 main compartments, which I'm sure you and others know are optimized through different training modalities. You've then got, which is incredibly important, is mobility, which is usually through stretching, through exercises that make the viscera move, which is another very important benefit of exercise, is not just muscle movement, but getting the viscera and organs to almost like massage themselves. But that gives you mobility, which is unbelievably important. And then the last part is coordination and balance. So some people are now saying that it doesn't really matter how much muscle mass you got. If you wobble and you fall down the stairs, or if you're unable to coordinate, that's a real risk to your longevity. That's a real risk to your health span. You end up dying early or something bad happening. So those 5 domains are super important. They also help, by the way, with bones, which are another thing that happen to be quite handy if you want to live for a long time. And, it's the weights, it's the strength endurance, it's the HIIT, it's the aerobic, it's the walking around forever with a little rucksack on you, walking up hills and doing that kind of zone 2 stuff forever. But do not forget the importance of coordination. That's balance, coordination, and this mobility, stretching, range of movement, and getting those viscera, those fascia to move to. That's it. That's longevity exercise in a nutshell.
Brilliant. So apart from VO2 Max, what else?
That's a good question. Then it gets into kind of nuances. I would say what I look for then is meaning. So I move away from physiology and I jump straight into where we see the people survive through the unfortunate likely things that might happen, and they're in big trouble, or when they're very much older, it's having an incredible network around you. Literally build network and build care strength. They're the ones that will do the research for you. They're the ones that will help you either financially or logistically or in other care circumstances. Sounds like it's not really medicine. Doesn't sound like something you can buy off Amazon, but that we really go deep into that. So we really ask questions. What is your care network strength? Who have you got around you? Do you have a power of attorney? These kinds of things. But then shifting back into the sort of more traditional longevity molecular kind of stuff, it's then looking at nutrition. So we eat. People say that they're getting the right amount of stuff, but you don't know what you need unless you test it. So micronutritional deficits are really important. We have fiber deficits. We've usually got mismatches in the kind of amino acids that we have from our proteins. A lot of our food is toxic because it carries a lot of either chemicals from processing or environmental toxins in them. So eating clean, eating real, all of that basic stuff is huge longevity benefit in my view. It also helps your mind and your brain, and the hardest thing to fix, of course, is not your muscle, it's your brain. So nutritional medicine and subtractive medicine, removing things that are toxic for you, I think is the next thing after VO2. We talked about food and lipids. You will not fix your lipids if you're blessed with those genes through nutrition alone. And so getting that really top shape is really important. Good low sugars, good low insulins, good low lipids. That is absolutely critical. And then after that, it becomes more nuanced. It really depends on your genetics, your background risk, your environment, and tailoring things around that. But after you've done your VO2 max and your bloods and some of your asteroid avoiding imaging and various other sort of cancer checks, you're into the minutiae. Then you're into the kind of like fine tuning.
You're talking a bit about a longevity doctor being one that studies mice, right? And Aubrey de Grey is currently doing a large study on, I think, 1,000 mice, and he's trying to increase that to 2,000 mice on a bunch of different advanced therapeutics. So stem cells and gene therapy and also rapamycin, which he said to me is proven in mice, but it's not proven in humans. It's not going to be proven in humans. And that's something that you posted about with a certain Brian J as well, that he was actually aging from taking rapamycin.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of us were wondering why on earth is someone who's really taking their longevity seriously. For whatever you say about Brian, at least he does what he says he's going to do, and he measures it and he publishes it, which is cool. Why someone wouldn't automatically know that taking an immunosuppressant like that ain't good for you surprised a lot of us. Like, because there are some things where we're going, let's wait and see what breaks Brian. But that was one where we all guessed that was not going to be cool. That's really not a good move.
He's not the only person. I know Kayla Barnes was thinking about taking it, and Brian Kennedy mentioned.
Brian doesn't any. Loads of people. We took the stance that immunological robustness is extremely important, and if you take something that operates on this rapamycin pathway, the mTOR pathway, that was named after rapamycin, the mechanism of transport of rapamycin is why people call it mTOR, and you block those mTOR pathways, yes, you are going to effectively slow down metabolism, but you're also crushing the immune system. And what we know really well is that if you've got an overworked immune system that's too old and too habituated to the things around it, so, there's the whole of the immune system is like a balance between self and non-self. So after a long time, when you're 70 or 80, your immune system becomes really good at saying, okay, you're friendly and you're me. But it becomes less good at saying, oh, you're not friendly and you're not me, generally. And so what rapamycin will do is kind of reset that a bit. It'll kind of take the brakes off the suppressive bits of the immune system and allow yourself to start recognizing self from non-self in a more efficient way in older people. The pathway, though, is interesting. So people like Peter Attia were toying, I believe, with rapamycin because he wanted to benefit from calories, like not be catabolic, not lose his muscle mass, but also not have the disadvantage of his cells being in repair mode, which is what rapamycin seems to do, or it does theoretically. But yeah, I will look forward to the future rapalogs that get round the problem, but taking rapamycin for a long time, my view, dumb move. But again, do you remember at the beginning I said that a lot of people ask, should I be on? What do you think of? That's not the question to be asking. The question to be asking is, what do I need to know if I need to be on something? And if you look at the literature, if you're 70, you want an immunological reset, cool. If you're 15 and otherwise well, not cool. Something in between is a nuanced, personalized decision. But you need to measure what you need to measure, do the intervention, retest, see if it works. And that's something which you have to credit people like Brian for. He did it, he saw it wasn't working, he stopped.
So with that in mind, what do I need to know to potentially take things like NMN, NAD+, NAD-, like the abundance of, let's say, longevity supplements that seem to be grabbing a lot of attention on social media ads?
Take some mushrooms in the jungle and chill a bit is the first thing I would probably say. But if you are of the kind of mindset, like the third category of people that are just inevitably eagles wanting to know what the latest is and eager to try things, which is a third of people, we're not going to really ever stop you. Whether there's advertising or not, we're never going to be the wise old owls enough to stop you from trying stuff. You're going to do it. It's just your wiring. And what I would do is not buy the first thing that is advertised by the coolest longevity doctor who's working in mice. Read the papers really, really well, and you will probably find some signal from noise in there. For instance, NAD is a classic example. So many people take NAD infusions because their friends have told them they feel great from it. And yes, there may be a placebo effect, but it's inevitable that you're going to feel great from having a massive dose of an energy donor like NAD plus straight into your veins. You're actually getting more of it than your whole body, than you've got in your whole body in one shot. Of course, you're going to buzz, but you're also, I think, something like I can't remember the exact number. It's something between 70 and 200 times more than your normal cells. Inflamed cells will vacuum out that NAD. And we've had a case of someone going blind in one eye temporarily, another person where very, very coincidentally an old tumor got reactivated. We've had some interesting cases of people who've gone off and done it. But if you look at the science, you can avoid that problem of just going off and doing something because someone else said it was cool. And, the real people like the postdocs at Newcastle, Nicola Conlon, etc. We know that they're the ones who are not shouting from the rooftops, but they're doing the real work. And just be cool about saying, it's marketing. Okay, cool. I've learned about the name. I'm now going to learn about the science. When you learn about the science, when you listen to the people that are really doing it, when you listen to the people who deal with the people who get the side effects and who pick up the pieces when things go wrong, folk, I'm not saying us, but folk like us, get a balanced view.
I think this is the issue. I think people find it very difficult to find or trust that source. I think this is the reason why people ask me, like, who can I trust in my city? Because there is so much noise in this space and we risk kind of blowing it all up because we have a few bad actors.
Sure, but we're in an innovation phase. So like, I am not the kind of person that says we must lock down on everything, remove liberties, kind of from a market perspective. I guess I'm slightly libertarian, which is that you've got to allow people to try as many experiments as they can, because from those experiments, we will work out what works best. You cannot rely on science alone. You cannot rely on science alone to run all the experiments that they need to give us the answers. If you do, you will wait for 100 years before making the breakthroughs. There are mavericks out there, and it's mostly mavericks out there, which is the dangers. But it's a huge time of innovation and change, just like AI. Okay? And you kind of need to let these experiments happen in order to get to a decent answer. So it's a disappointing answer, but there isn't a good answer to your question of who to trust out there. There isn't, because it's mostly mavericks. The folk who've been doing it a very long time, who tend not to be doing so much in the way of marketing, who have got really robust scientific creds. But even those, like, we've got David Sinclair, who's hugely controversial, being a resveratrol cert pathway world expert at Harvard with 200 conflicts of interest. So who do you trust? That's the challenge. If you can trust nobody, then trust the process of thesis, measure, intervene, wash out, remeasure, decide. And that is a very reasonable N of 1 framework to work on, whoever the physician is. Preferably choose one that's not overcharging you for that process.
So interesting question, because N of 1, great process. So for example, if I go for an NAD infusion, am I going to do lasting damage with just one infusion?
If you're very unlucky, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, the folk who see the downsides are the ones to listen to as well. So get a consult, spend your money on your folk who are paid to give you more. Generally speaking, folk that the more they offer you, the more that ends up in their clinic's pocket are one side of it. They're maverick, first adopters, self-believers, not necessarily selling you things they know are bad. They just don't know that they are bad. But listen to those folk, but then also find the critics. Look up on the internet. Say, Ask ChatGPT today. Do deep research. It will come back with the answer to your question of what do I need to know if I should be on NAD? And it will do some great work for you. Or even who are the people that I should follow as a counter to the NAD craze? You will get some surprisingly good answers even today from AI. There's not that many people like me who end up doing podcasts with people like you out there. But it's amazing what the tools are out there already that can help you. And I would say use them aggressively.
You coined a LinkedIn post titled "The Longevity Doctor Who Wants to Die."
Ah, yeah, that is true. That is true.
We live in a world. We live in a niche of people that want to extend their life, potentially indefinitely. What does life mean to you? What does afterlife mean to you?
I am of the conclusion, maybe wrong, that I will die. And that is a fairly reasonable stance to take. All of the last X many billions of years of our evolution have led us to the moment where we're either speaking into this microphone or listening to these two dudes speaking into microphones. And the purpose of us doing this is to experience, acquire, learn, evolve for the next generation. That's what we were built to do. And immortality for me, like something I was tempted to put into my contracts with our clients, is an impossibility. I actually wanted to write into my contracts with my clients that should they live forever, I shall give them all their money back. But of course, that's going to happen in a very, very long time. So there's like very limited downside to that clause in the contract. But I have felt a few occasions in my life where I've been really okay about this being my last day. And it's a wonderful thing because it's not about being happy about dying. It's about being so filled with awesomeness in life that you just find okayness in all things. This is not a mushroom-based jungle medicine experience. This is just from beautiful junctures in life that don't last long, but you find completeness. And I only wish that we could all feel that, because then the concept of death no longer is the issue. The concept of not having done enough with your days becomes the priority. I don't want to die until I feel one of those points again, or that point becomes a period, or that period becomes a permanent thing. And I suspect that will be in quite a long period of time after I have done a few more awesome things, both selfishly and also as legacy for others, including my family, including my profession. It is a fair and long-standing stance to take that you wish to out-nature nature, to out-smart entropy, to persist longer than the very cells that have a life expectancy built into them. It's a fair position to take, but it's very much Pascal's wager. And Pascal famously said that it is rational to believe in God if there is the most minute chance, minuscule chance of an eternal prize. And so the third of the folk that we work with or steer or guide or counsel or try to help, they're living in Pascal's wager world. I don't believe it is reality, but what I do think is that even in that delusion, you can still achieve that same position that you, I, and I hope lots of other people feel occasionally, which is that sense of completeness. And if they do, then so what if they also want to live way beyond what nature intended?
For me, this whole movement is about human flourishing. It's about allowing everyone
Right.
to heal, have self-compassion, love thyself, and then love others and be compassionate towards others and create this snowball effect. And so it's more about how we respect ourselves. And I don't know whether I want to live forever. I know I want to live a long time and longer because I have so many more adventures and completeness to fulfill. We obsess over VO2 Max. We obsess over nutrition and all this. Coming back to joy, joy span, presence, love, all these things that are so important that I feel often get completely forgotten about in this space. And also peace. We can't seemingly heal ourselves without healing the world around us.
Flourishing, joy, peace, you can't put in something that Amazon delivers you the next day. And if you get premium, it doesn't give you more joy. Old phrase, thy body is thy temple. If your cells are not in harmony, if your metabolism at its core is broken, finding meaning and finding flourishing is just a lot harder. It is not to say that the likes of the great Stephen Hawking, who didn't outwardly appear to have the best physiology, didn't feel human flourishing and completeness, but it was a lot harder. That said, he said it was his gift that he was locked inside his body and only able to visualize things because he couldn't draw them anymore. And that's where he made his greatest breakthroughs. So sometimes you don't know how mishap can sometimes transform into awesome things for you. But in general, mishaps are mishaps.
Yeah.
Cherishing every cell of your body as best you can whilst enjoying the use of it rather than sticking yourself in a metaphorical fridge of isolation and purity is incredibly important. But for most of us, it means nothing without meaning. And the meaning comes from using that body, using those cells to fulfill what you're best at or what you most dream of, whether that's seeing a particular place, whether that's enjoying seeing your kids become something that you'd hope them to be, or just the mudita of seeing them become whatever they become without a selfish sense of pride. Just being in awe and wonder of what gave birth to us and cradled us as single-celled organisms right through to these 38 trillion rather peculiar cells that we as humans are now. And discovering things that move the needle as far as life is concerned, if you have the luck to have the brain and the education and the chance and the money and the security and the safety to do so. So for me, it's a continuum. You can't extract the VO2 max from the flourishing. You can't extract the metabolism from the meaning. You need both. And you should do both. And the physician, the doctor, the clinician, the medical scientist, the longevity expert who's great at treating mice as well as humans in future, their greatest purpose, in my view, is to join the both together. Florence Nightingale famously said something on the lines of, a physician is part diagnostician, part philosopher, part priest. My friend Jordan Schlane, the famous doctor in America, I think changed that a little bit to part physician, part bartender, part priest thing. And in there is wisdom. In there is not just the diagnostics and the molecules. It's also the navigation through the gray of what life's meaning is and finding purpose. And then also coming to terms with the end. That's the priest part.
I don't know if you read Bruce Lipton's, I think it's Bruce, Honeymoon Effect. You've been talking a lot about cells, and he's a cellular biologist. And the deeper he went on his research, the more he saw a godlike kind of effect, or something that couldn't be explained simply by nature. It actually changed. The more he studied cells, it changed his view on spirituality and all that. As your journey has gone on, as you've seen death, has your view on the afterlife, on spirituality, on...
We are the afterlife of the people that were here before us. And the only reason we don't feel that that is an afterlife is because we're disconnected from everything that's happened in our past. And you can get there through meditation practices, spiritual practices, just as folk have done in other reflective things like religions and so forth. I won't probably remember my name in the next iteration of whatever it is that I become part of. But I do think that having been in certain parts of the world and seen a few things that make you think, oh, wow, that's what life's about, usually tough situations rather than just the joyful ones. I do feel that reductionist science knows of life is part of a spectrum of fractal emergence from how electrons interact with each other, quantum fields vibrate, through to what you feel when you listen to Bach or Debussy, and when you lose yourself in, the kind of touching the void as we feel when we're climbing mountains.
Thank you so much for mentioning Bach and Debussy, because neuroacoustic therapy, a new area that has been coined by you, Jack. I've been obsessed with sound baths. I never would have thought it when I went to my first one. And we did an amazing session with the guys from Olio.
Olo. Yeah, Marcus.
Again,
and so.
Putting our eye masks on and hearing this incredible sound that was going around us from nature.
Yeah.
What is the power of sound to heal?
Idea that everything is actually an emergence of quantum fields, which are vibrational frequencies. I find that spookily similar, that the harmonics and resonances that we have in quantum field theory have so much, people who visualize this stuff using computer graphics demonstrate how similar sound looks or feels in terms of what's concordant, what's discordant, what's resonant, what's disresonant. About 4 years ago, I started taking up the piano during COVID, and I absolutely obsessively try very badly to play decent classical and jazz, including some Bach and Debussy. I practice fiercely every day against an impenetrable wall of inability to move my fingers properly on the right keys, but I try. But what I feel there is, I think, the closest thing to what people describe who are expert meditators. I am completely lost in the sound. And I realize that there is something going on that creates resonance inside this thing that we construct inside this sort of dark, silent thing called our brain, which somehow or other recapitulates or reflects what fundamental concordance and discordance is. It's harder to put more words to it, but I think you're touching the very essence of the universe in a wildly emergent form through music. It's the closest thing I think we've got to feeling how it is that the universe actually works, bizarrely enough. So neuroacoustic therapy was a little way for me to describe this new, I suppose, class of modalities, which usually involve either recordings of nature or music, or both combined, like that which you listen to, which completely immerse you either through headphones, but more ideally through spatial audio systems, where you actually feel as if you're in the chords of the guitar as they're being struck by droplets of water, being recorded by the highest resolution microphones in the world, and being played at such high fidelity that you just no longer recognize yourself as being separate from the sound. And I would not be surprised if we learn how to measure in terms of bioelectric fields, like the work of Michael Levin, for instance, at Tufts, which I've always found for a couple of decades completely bizarre and brilliant. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start to learn how to measure that, and then, like in his therapeutic company that's just been formed, learn how to manipulate that for both regenerative and disease treatment purposes. So it's not just about feeling great as a bunch of people listening to some awesome tracks recorded in the Amazon with a guitarist. I actually think they'll have some very serious and profound roles in how we treat people in future. And I don't think it will be in 100 years' time.
Jack, final question, which I always ask my guests. I want to look into your crystal ball. By 2030, what will a doctor, a longevity doctor, look like to us?
They'll have long hair and a grey beard. There will be, by that time, some distinct field of preventology that will have some standards around it. I think the craziness of the maverick innovator will start to make its way into teaching. We've seen the first glimpses of this, of large investors like one of the Walmart heiresses putting an enormous amount of money behind the first longevity medical school. And there are longevity medicine courses, certifications, things that are claiming to be the first of this, the first of that. I mean, I've got to admit, having been in this for nearly 2 decades, none of this seems new, but that will rapidly inflect now, because people believe that there will be longevity drugs on top of the lifestyle and physiologic medicine that we're already practicing and have been for a long time. A lot of the stuff that's been used in elite sport doping that's now made its way into so-called longevity practice, including so-called peptide therapeutics, etc. The things that we're seeing in the real application of meaningful regenerative medicine through stem cell therapeutics will become indicated properly, taught properly, and practiced properly. And your very point at the beginning will no longer be a question. So this interview will not be necessary. You will know who to go to by 2030.
Better get a move on then. And just the final one on peptides, stem cells, anything that is deemed a bit advanced at this point, would you recommend just for people to hang tight for a few years?
With great power comes great responsibility, as Spider-Man once said. There is no question that they are very powerful, and the MD PhDs in our group are very much looking forward to knowing when we can unleash these weapons against disease, or these tools against degeneration, in the right way, at the right time, for the right people. The obvious side effects of introducing super powerful things too early is up to you, but our view is, why not wait till 2030 until we get the readouts? Much better.
Jack, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
If you want to know what tomorrow has in store like I do, you definitely want to listen to our recent episode where I talked to Peter Diamandis about a future where we could live forever. Thank you so much.